Hello, race fans. Welcome into Backseat Drivers. I'm Alex Weaver here with Jonathan and Jesse. Kansas, possibly one of the best races of the year, if not the best race. The aero package delivered.
Yeah, it absolutely delivered. I think if you look if you look at racing in the field itself, there wasn't a dull moment all race. The track changed from daytime to nighttime. That drew everybody even closer. And a lot of people had a lot of super impressive runs. We talk about, those guys back in the pack getting TV time. Well, the guys who usually run back of the pack, mid-pack, were up there mixing it up for the top 10.
Some new names.
It was absolutely, I think, the best race we've had all year long, and we've been to a couple short tracks.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. Definitely the best race of the season. The aero package, like you guys said, performed. And on top of that, we saw overtime. We saw 5 wide on restarts. We saw words on pit road after the race. I mean, it was everything that fans could want out of a NASCAR race. So, Kansas, thank you.
Let's talk about those restarts because I think that was a highlight of the race. Those restarts were insane. Why do we think that Kansas delivered such strong restarts?
Well, I think, we talked about the field being grouped so close together and these cars being as evenly matched as possible. It's all in the driver's hands. So, they're running that 550 tapered spacer. So you don't have, 550 horsepower is a lot of horsepower, but it's not, what they're used to having in the past. So your restarts are super critical. So, you don't have time to wait on the person in front of you to get a good restart.
Yep.
So you're either going to push them or you're going to be fanning out 3 or 4 or 5 wide going into the corners there. So I think that plays a big role into, why restarts were so crazy, so chaotic and hectic. And the cooler temperatures at Kansas means that those Goodyear tires stick to the racetrack a lot better too, so you can afford to kind of fan out on restarts.
I also think you can tell at this point, we're far enough into the season that teams are starting to try to figure out these restarts. They're starting to, you can really tell that they have agendas now with what they're doing. And in the first, quarter of the season, everyone was kind of just trying different things, trying to understand this new aero package. And I feel like we're starting to really see it come together now at this point in the season.
All right, let's talk about the forever rookie. Alex Bowman put on a show, and he has for the last 3 weeks, but he can't quite break through to that P1. He's finished P2 the last 3 weeks. That's the only driver in Cup history to finish consecutively runner-up finishes before their first win.
Yeah, without a win. I think if you're Alex Bowman, he was really hard on himself after
he was
that
very
win.
frustrated.
Not very proud of myself on lane choice there at the end. Just made some bad decisions and really shouldn't have ever given the 2-car a chance at it. But, just made some bad calls there through lap traffic and got tied off, had to lift, and then the 2 was able to drive around us.
As a body of work, I think he's the best driver over there right now. I know Chase has a win, but it came at a plate track. If you look at consistency over the past 3 weeks, Alex Bowman is far and beyond, any of the other drivers over there. And that's saying a lot because, you got guys finishing in the top 5, top 10 every week like Chase. So, yes, he wants to get that win, but it'll come.
Clint was a little upset that he got a hard block by Eric Jones. Should he have been upset?
I don't know. I think I do think his frustrations were justified, but I have to believe that adrenaline played factor. He's at his home track. He wants that win. He's been decently consistent this year, but he hasn't been a standout driver, in my opinion, over the past couple weeks. So, I think he saw his shot, and unfortunately, he felt like Jones got in the way a little bit.
He put you in a bad situation. I lifted for him, cost me 3 spots right there. We should have finished second. Everybody knows that. That was dumb on his part. I mean, next time, I guess that's what he wants.
Go to the night before. Go to the truck race. Ross Chastain won that race because the leader had a problem. So if you're Eric Jones and you're coming to the white flag and you think there's a chance that Bowman might catch the 2-car, what happens if they get into an incident? You need to be in front of the 14 so you can win that race.
It's like the Ryan Blaney at the Roval situation.
I don't care if Clint Boyer has a 50-mile-an-hour run on me. I'm going to go up and block him and protect that position. Every single point matters now. It's so close there within that top 15 if you don't have a win. Is Clint justified in being mad? Yes, he's absolutely justified.
So you also you throw the block and then you go over and talk.
Because in Clint's defense too, what if the top 2 have a problem? You need to be past the 20 car so you can be in position to capitalize. I don't think there is a wrong answer here. I think this is competitiveness. We have the best drivers in the world running our stock cars on these racetracks every single week. So if you're not mad about being blocked, I don't want you driving for me. And if you're not going to throw the block, I don't want you driving for me either. So I think there's no right or wrong answer in this situation. There was frustration, and it made for great TV, beating on race cars afterwards. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you have to believe that Boyer would throw up the block.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
100%.
So,
yeah. We also
that
got
says it
the
all.
"you're smarter than that" quote. That's my favorite quote on the show. All right. Also, I kind of, at the end of the race, took a moment, looked at the top 10. We had Chris Buescher and Tyler Reddick, who first Cup start for him, second Cup start for him this year, goes out there and gets a top 10. Talk about those two guys. I know you're a Chris Buescher fan.
Well, if we
you
throw
like
back
that
to our
30
draft episode and we talked about, Mr. Irrelevant, who would be kind of at the bottom of everybody's draft board but can significantly make an impact on a team, Buescher was my guy. And, I think now we talk about all these race cars, the playing field being a lot leveler.
Mhm.
Kansas was really the first time that we've, seen this
all that,
package
yep.
with its true intent of doing that. And, I mean, it wasn't just he got lucky and ended up in the top 10 at the end of the race. He was top 5, top 10 all night long. And I looked up and saw Tyler Reddick in the top 10, and I'm like,
most of the night.
well, I thought at first I just saw the 3 on the side of the car. I'm like, oh, Austin Dillon. And I'm like, no, Austin's driving a green car. That's Tyler Reddick's running in the top 10. So, I mean, he ran well all night, too. They really put themselves in position, set themselves up well. So it was very, very cool to see those two guys running up
Mr.
there.
Irrelevant was relevant this week.
Well, I mean, I'll admit I'm a huge Tyler Reddick fan. I love watching him race in the Xfinity Series, and even as the Xfinity Series champion last year, I still don't feel like he got the credit that
He's
he
got a
necessarily
chip.
deserved. Yeah, and he has that chip, and he's a hard driver. He races hard. He's not afraid to be competitive. He's not afraid to push the limits.
He doesn't really back down either.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if it's stage 1 of the race or the final stage of the race. Tyler Reddick is going to battle you as hard as he can for that position. All right, so much going on at Kansas. We haven't even got to the winner yet. Let's talk about Keselowski. Is this his third win? He joins Kyle Busch this year. I feel like he has to be a Hall of Famer.
Well,
30 wins?
30 wins.
Oh yeah, no doubt. He will be in the Hall of Fame because his career is not even close to being over. I think what we've seen from him has already been so impressive. Like you said, 30 wins. I think as far as Hall of Famers go, he's definitely on the track.
When he's one of those guys, too, he's not the youngest in the garage, but he's not one of the oldest. We kind of tend to forget about him when we mention those young guns and some of the guys. I mean, he's in his 30s. He's not very old.
Well, I have to look at his legacy as well. I mean, he's got 30 wins, the majority of those coming driving for Roger Penske, a Hall of Fame car owner. He's certainly made his mark on the sport. He's won a championship. So, if you look at his body of work as a whole, yes, he's a Hall of Famer. I think where you can really get into debate is if he goes on the ballot, is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
I think you can make that argument for him if you really want to get into the weeds and kind of, stir up a little controversy about this. I don't think I'd vote him in first ballot. With just 30 wins in the championship. Now, if he wins multiple championships, and I mean, he's going to win a ton more races. So, interested to see where he stacks up in terms of all-timers at the end of his career.
Yep. Well, here on Backseat Drivers, we've also a lot of times mentioned that we think Kyle Busch is possibly the best driver right now in the garage, if not going to be of all time. But the difference between him and Keselowski, I have felt like, especially this season, is Keselowski has clean races. When Kyle, he had a penalty this race, he tends to have a bit more penalties. He ran through too many boxes on pit road. I think that's kind of the difference between them this season so far.
You said it, Alex. Clean races. He's been consistent and he's been clean, and we haven't seen that from Kyle Busch over the past couple of weeks. Some can argue that he peaked early in the season and maybe lost his focus. I don't believe that. I think he's always focused. He's a hard race car driver, but we've seen some of those like small mistakes, like running through too many pit boxes,
speeding on pit road. He has them almost every week now.
And if just a few weeks ago we're all having this conversation about Kyle Busch being the best driver of our generation and comparing him to Richard Petty, and now we're seeing him over the past couple weeks make these mistakes, I don't know. I think we need to see some changes from Kyle Busch.
So I don't think Kyle has anything to worry about. I think Kyle's.
I know where this conversation. This is going to be he still wins. So
well, he does still win, and I think he's able to overcome adversity. I think if you look at his 200th win, he had problems on pit road, and he drove through the field like a madman. I think and I don't know this to be fact, but I think Kyle needs something to focus in on. I think
like a milestone.
Well, over the past week or 2 weeks, there's a lot of conversation about, what he says in the media. There's a lot of distractions going on. I think, once we get down the stretch here and that stuff calms down and he's not the name that's being talked about on the radio every week or in pre-race, I think that's when they'll kind of find their groove. I don't think he's peaked too soon, so to speak. I mean, you got 3 wins and all the bonus points and everything that come with that. He's very safe, in the top, 3 or 4 guys in the points right now, so they don't have to worry about making it past Indianapolis. But, definitely I think he might get in his own head a little bit, and that may have been where the pit road thing came in. But Brad Keselowski just seems very stable. He's got Paul Wolfe that's calling the shots on the box, and Paul's a risk taker. And I think if you're going to be a risk taker, you've got to be calm because sometimes it looks like risks aren't going to pay out. So I think all around Penske just has their wits about them right now. When things go wrong, they don't panic, they don't get frustrated, they don't get upset. They just let it play out as it is. And I think you see that with not only him, but Joey Logano as well.
All right, so right now, who is better this season?
Oh, that's
a
tough question.
Or the 2?
After I just said all of that, I'm going to go with the 18 because it's exactly what you said. We've seen him make mistakes or we've seen him face adversity during races, and he gets through it. We've seen him drive through traffic like no other driver this season. And so I think, I do believe as of right now, Kyle Busch is the better driver.
Neither.
I
think Joey's better than both of them right now, but.
Okay,
was that one of the options?
That wasn't my question, but
there are no rules here.
All right. Okay. We've talked about Penske a lot, but let's talk about Hendrick. They seem to be kind of on the rise. We were wondering when they were going to show up. Feels like they have. They finished P2, 4, and 6, 3 out of the 4 cars in the top 10.
Kansas was my checkbox for them.
Was it?
Yes. Kansas was my checkbox for Hendrick Motorsports. Coca-Cola 600 is my double checkbox for Hendrick Motorsports, but I think they're back. I think they better watch out when we come down through this summer stretch because
Tiger Woods, folks.
I mean, Jimmy Johnson had a miserable day at Kansas and ended up finishing fairly well.
6th.
William Byron, he was battling Brad Keselowski for second place when we thought Harvick was going to run away with it. Chase Elliott, he had a solid run, and Alex Bowman, second place finish in a row. I think if you look at the overall health of an organization, especially one with 4 cars, you could make the argument that Hendrick Motorsports is in the best position going into this summer stretch than any other organization. And we're talking about organizations with, that have won every other race except for Talladega this year.
They don't slack off either because they're teammates. They race each other very hard.
Alex wants to be the guy.
Yeah.
Chase wants to be the guy. William wants to be the guy. Jimmy's got 7 championships.
Jimmy
is the guy. So I think it's just the team dynamic over there. And I think, if anybody can keep guys in line, I think Mr. Hendrick can do it. I think their personalities work well together, and they do work well together. But when you put on a helmet, and we saw this with Ryan Blaney, over the past couple of weeks, he's getting irritated with his teammates. When you're racing around,
babysitting.
When you're racing around guys and you're in competition meetings with them during the week, and so beat you last week, you want to go out and beat these guys.
Bowman is right now the best driver at Hendrick. Consistency has been key for him, and we haven't necessarily seen that. Chase would be our next best as far as consistency goes, but you make a really good point when you say that you kind of got Jimmy up here and then you got these 3 guys battling to be that next guy, and they all seem to be pretty similar in temperament too off the track, so it's interesting to think about them kind of interacting and then putting those helmets on, and they all seem to be, obviously Chase is a little bit older, but they're all young, they're real close in age, so it's kind of an interesting dynamic going on at Hendrick right now.
I think if William Byron had the chance
to
put a bumper to any of his teammates to get a win, I think he would do it. I think he's probably,
what is it that you always say?
He's a sleeper. He's a silent assassin, man.
Silent assassin.
Byron. I've had the chance to talk to him, many times.
He knows his stuff.
He does not.
He has a smart racing mind.
He's not out there to make friends, and I don't think it matters if. And granted, I don't think anybody's going to go out and wreck a teammate. I don't think there's no internal drama in Hendrick Motorsports.
I'd wreck a teammate.
But you've got guys, running around each other every week. I mean, it's bound to happen. They want to beat each other. It's just, more than anything, it's going to be awesome for us to watch.
All right. How about a team that wants to beat everybody else, but I'm really surprised that they haven't. Stewart Haas Racing has not found victory lane. At this point last year, they had, what, 5 wins already?
I mean, that's Mount St. Helens ready to erupt over there.
Okay, so Kevin Harvick has to be frustrated.
He's got to be going out of his mind.
When does he lose it?
Well,
Has he already lost it?
if I'm Kevin Harvick, I've already lost
Me
it.
too.
I mean, I think if you even just this past week at Kansas, what took him out of the race was a fluke thing. It's a tire issue. It's an unplanned pit stop. And if you look back at last season, at this point last season, he had 5 wins, 8 wins total. And I got curious, did a little bit of research, and not since 2012 has he gone this far into a season without a win. I'm incredibly frustrated if I'm Kevin
Me
Harvick.
too.
Well, and Kevin's lived this before in his RCR days. I mean, he'd have years where he was running that 29 over there with Richard Childress, and they'd set the world on fire. And then some years they'd come out and they couldn't seem to get it going. And it's just, I don't think he's experienced that with Tony Stewart and Gene Haas over there. So I do think there are a lot of factors at play, but I mean, one of the worst analogies ever, and I hate it, but it works for this situation.
But he's saying it, folks.
It's like he's like a duck on a pond right now. I think everything on the surface is calm. Everything, they're keeping their wits about them, but underneath the surface, it has got to be burning every single driver over there up. I mean, when you have fast race cars and you're able to dominate the first part of a race, and then you have something that goes wrong, that tear off sticks to the front of the car, and then they had tires chattering the rest of the race. I mean, it's only a matter of time. You're only going to take so much, and then you have to release that pressure somehow. So I think if things don't turn around pretty soon, we're gonna hear from Kevin instead of
Who's the best car there right now? The 14?
yes.
I agree.
I agree with that. All right.
Well, in terms of finishes, yes.
Okay, so Penske and Gibbs, you said earlier, they've won every single race with the exception of Talladega. Are they kind of peaking way too early, or do we think that it's okay to not worry about, even though they just did win in Kansas, but still, teams are starting to become a little even right now.
I agree with that. We're starting to see it all kind of come together, and it's like we talked about, with the restarts. I think we're just seeing people teams start to figure out this this new package, and we're seeing more strategy. We're seeing more strategy work, and I don't know that you can argue that they've peaked too soon, because it's like you said, a lot of drivers too. They feel pretty safe right now.
So I've seen it way too many times of people go through the summer slump. Jimmy Johnson, Chad Canales are probably the most famous people for starting the year out, win. Then you go through that summer slump, and then once we get to mid-August, they peak again. So I don't think you can write anyone off. I will say I am worried about both teams, though, because it's not just a couple of guys. I mean, Denny Hamlin hasn't run well, for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Martin Truex Jr., with the exception of Richmond and Dover, they've had things go wrong as well. We talked about Kyle's troubles. Eric Jones, he didn't start off all that hot, but he ends up getting the finish. I think the kind of same thing could be said for Penske. I just think I don't know if it's a fall off, or I don't know if kind of the tide is rising for everybody else. I think Stewart Haas Racing is figured out how to keep consistency up the entire year. We're talking about them being frustrated, but they've also finished in the top 5, top 10. They're there. Hendrick Motorsports, they're rocketing to the top. So I don't know. It's interesting to me. It's a weird part of the season right now.
Are
going
you
to the
worried
summer.
about 2 teams, though, that
Yes.
5 of their 7 drivers are already locked in the playoffs?
I mean, in terms of worried about if they're going to be fine come playoff time, no. I'm concerned about those teams and how they're going to perform over the summer.
Do you think that the summer slump you're talking about, you mentioned it earlier and you made a really good point with Kyle Busch and other drivers similar to him with the same mentality, kind of like to have that goal that they're working towards. Do you think that summer slump goes hand in hand with that, because the playoffs aren't quite here yet, but then coming into the fall, that's when it really gears up?
No, I think, we talked about this upstairs where we came down. It's the bonus points for the regular season championship, I think, in stage points as well. I think you're going to have to really key in on those over the summer. Obviously, you win a race, that's 5 bonus points. But let's not forget, that the winner of the regular season, I believe, carries 15 bonus points over into the playoffs, and they reset each round. So if I'm calling the shots on any of those teams, that's my goal. I mean, that's a huge carrot to dangle out in front of somebody is those points that reset. So I don't know.
Those two teams have claimed victory lane every single race except one.
I'm just super hesitant. I mean, you see it almost every year.
If I'm putting money on the table right now, I'm Penske and Gibbs.
I'm with Alex.
Full fold of money.
No, I'm not.
Who are you, Hendrick now?
I'm Hendrick and
Wow,
Stewart Haas.
Loyalty, man.
No, it's not loyalty, but I think if you look at how Hendrick has been trending, and I think if you look the fact that Stewart Haas hasn't won a race this year, and we're 12 races into the season.
How do you know that Hendrick hasn't peaked? They're just having a summer peak.
We don't know, but how do you know that Gibbs and Penske aren't going to hit rock bottom and not going to finish?
5 of 7
you
cars
don't
are
know.
locked in.
I just think when Stewart Haas Racing hits, I think
I
they're
agree.
going to hit.
All right. Well, next week we have the All-Star race. It's a fun one. We always get to see the top drivers in our sport go after $1 million. Let's talk about the fan vote, though. We know who's in it as far as winning and qualifying to be in that race. But the top 5 currently for the All-Star race are Matt DiBenedetto, Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, William Byron, and Bubba Wallace. Is Matty D going to carry the torch of the fan vote now?
I mean,
The
so
Guido,
yeah,
his new self-proclaimed nickname.
I don't know. It just depends. Is Dale Jr. going to tweet to try to get Bowman in the 88 camp because he likes him so much? I mean,
don't know.
that'll swing things. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Matt DiBenedetto's up there. Fans love him. He's very fan friendly.
They campaign for it
He goes
very hard.
He goes out of his way. But I do think out of that top 5, I do think your winner of the Open's going to come out of that. So who knows? Maybe the winner of the fan vote. Maybe they go to whoever finishes second in that fan vote, and I think that's super interesting to me as well.
I know who you think wins the Open. Who do you think wins and races their way in?
You know, I definitely think Alex Bowman has a great shot at racing his way in, and if anyone in that field wants it, he wants it, and he's said it multiple times. So I agree with you. I think he has a shot at racing his way in. Personally, though, like he's won my fan vote, and I believe that he's probably won a lot of other fans' votes over the past couple of weeks because everyone's just pulling for him at this point.
He's put on a show. I want him to be in the All-Star race. I think he deserves it.
Who do you? I mean, obviously the performance over the past couple of weeks, he's got to be the favorite going into that Open. But who do you think puts up the biggest fight for him?
Well, I know who you think.
Who do you think I think?
Larson.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw Larson. I mean, he doored the
We've been hanging out.
living you-know-what out of Chase Elliott to win an Open race a couple years ago.
I'm going
So,
after it for $1 million.
I mean, you know, who cares if the thing leaves on a hook? You got to get into the $1 million race. So I think there are a lot of guys that are really hungry back there in the field, and I think not only are you racing for $1 million in the main event later that night in the Open, just the opportunity to race for it, but I don't know. I don't think anybody's safe in that fan vote either, so Matt DiBenedetto can't go out there and just take his foot off the gas and save his race car, so it's a double-edged sword.
I kind of have a sleeper, I don't know if you can call him a sleeper, a surprise pick that I think is going to win the All-Star race.
Who's that? All-Star or the Open?
The All-Star race. The
Who's
whole race.
Okay.
I think 48.
I mean, he's 1 for 1 in exhibition races this year, so.
That's my point.
Yeah.
I liked the Clash. I think this is kind of a chance for him to be like, forget it, I'm going after it, and $1 million.
I agree. I think we saw him race differently in the Clash than we've seen him race all season. We saw a little bit of that aggressive side to him,
Yep.
and I loved it. Fans loved it. So I agree. I think that with like the less pressure, I think, in like the exhibition races, that it's kind of fun to see him like let his hair down a little bit. And
Yep.
I'm all for Black Hat Jimmy Johnson. Wreck everybody, man. Who cares?
But I do think let's say that the voting is how it's going to stay, and Matt DiBenedetto wins. I think Larson gets in.
I could see that. I mean, it
He's
wouldn't
a little
surprise
more
me.
aggressive.
42-88 door-to-door coming
Yep.
down the end of that thing. I would not surprise me one bit.
All right, well, these drivers get a chance to battle for $1 million, but what would you guys, keep them clean, please, do for $1 million?
You go first.
That's
if
a
you
really
have to
tough
you
question.
set
And by the way, I don't
precedent.
think the keep 'em clean comment was my way. So
Yeah, well, that's why I'm letting you go first. So you can set the tone for this.
oh man, that's really tough. I definitely wrecked my teammate for
Me
$1 million.
too.
That's for sure. I don't know. I think I'd probably be willing to get in a race car for $1 million, and I have zero race car
Yeah, me
race
too.
driving experience. So
Me too.
yeah.
I don't know if I'm getting out there with the field, but
Oh, I didn't say that.
Like
but
me
I'd
and
get
you.
in one. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I would turn my race car into a cruise missile for $1 million for sure. I would drive through anybody in that field.
Nana,
Yeah, why not?
mom,
Yep, in the wall.
wife.
Yep.
Gosh,
Oh
Lindsay.
wow.
So sorry.
And right after Mother's Day too. Like
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
All right.
That's $1 million.
Most of the drivers say they would wreck their Nana too.
And
so.
if you think of some of these teams, say Matt DiBenedetto gets in and he's got a shot. I mean, $1 million for Levine Family Racing. That helps the team. We're not talking about, it's not $1 million in a driver's pocket. You're talking about $1 million to help you, throughout the season to make the playoffs, to make a championship run. I mean, I think a lot of people think of this on the surface level. Oh yeah, we're going to pocket $1 million. You're going to go have a big party. No, you're talking about, solidifying yourself and having money to help you win a championship.
What about like your team owner?
What do you mean? Would I wreck my team?
Yeah,
owner?
like say you're part of Hendrick. Are you wrecking Rick Hendrick?
I think if Rick Hendrick had a chance at $1 million, Rick Hendrick would probably tell you, "Hey, wall me. I don't care. Just win the race." I don't think he cares.
you made a really good point earlier in reference to Kansas that if I'm a team owner, I expect you to go out there and race hard and block and push the limits. Much less in the All-Star race. I think if I'm a team owner, absolutely I expect my drivers to go out there and do whatever it takes to bring home that $1 million.
Well, now I talked to Kyle Busch last week and kind of on this topic,
Coach Gibbs, look out.
Yeah, and I was like, so I know Coach Gibbs hates tear up race cars like any typical team
I mean,
owner.
yeah.
But I asked him, I'm like, if you have to move your teammate and tear up a race car to win $1 million, is he a little bit more lenient? And he said yes, but he said now if him and Denny Hamlin get out there and they both take themselves out to win, that's the thing you got to watch out for. If you
I think
take
you might
out
have asked one of the most aggressive drivers though. Like maybe ask.
anybody would
like-
wreck anybody to win that race.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
You think Eric Jones is wrecking whoever?
But it's about being smart, doing it smart. Like not like exactly like you said, not being stupid about it. Don't just go out there and race so hard that you wreck yourself out. I mean,
Well, yeah, you don't want to wreck yourself, but I mean, if TV zooms in on my gloves and I'm turning right into somebody, I don't care after that race. $5 million check, who cares? What's the worst is going to
Nana's
happen?
gonna have to get a new hip.
Nana's
after
going to come out and like punch you in the face, but you still have $1 million in your pocket.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. All right, well, we will see who will have $1 million in their pocket. We're racing at Charlotte Motor Speedway next weekend in the All-Star race. Kansas put on a good one. We enjoyed it. We hope you guys did too. Thanks for tuning in, Backseat Drivers, and we will see you guys next week.